paper card is the label to look for.
Channel 5, Nashville.
The Republicans 7. Democrats are leading in 3, the Republicans leading in 6. With the 40 holdover seats that the Democrats have, they now would have 48. Our figures there show 49. We've moved to 6 elected. The figure is 6 elected, 3 leading, for a total now with the holdovers of 40-49. They're just 1 vote short of an even split in the new Senate, 2 votes short of assured control of the new Senate if they get all those seats for which they are now leading. There seems very little doubt that the Democrats will control the new Senate. That was preordained before these figures tonight because of the break in the holdover vote. The Republicans have elected 7 new senators. They're leading in 6 Senate races. They have holdovers of 26, so they would appear to have 39 seats in the new Senate. In the House races, 89 Democrats have been elected and 46 Republicans. The Democrats are leading for 38 other congressional seats and the Republicans for 38 congressional seats. That would give the Democrats 127 in the new House of Representatives and the Republicans 84. The Democrats have 247 in the present House in the 80th Congress, the Republicans 188. The Republicans have to hold on to all of their 188 seats and win 30 seats from the Democrats in order to take control of the new House. With the very close presidential race, it now seems rather unlikely that they will be able to win all of those 30 seats that they need. There are also gubernatorial races, you know. 21 state houses are up for election this year, and in the Democrats have elected 1, the Republicans have elected 1, Democrats leading for 3, and the Republicans leading for 3. With their holdovers, that would give the Democrats 15 and the Republicans 22. The Republicans have the majority of the state houses at the present time. John Hart is at Richard Nixon's headquarters with the key Nixon aide, his new spokesman, Herb Klein. Come in, John.
Walter, Herb Klein and I have been sitting here watching you and listening to Lionel Hampton, and as we were doing that, he wrote down 5 names on this card: Ohio, California, Texas, Illinois, and Pennsylvania. Herb, what do you mean by writing that down on that card?
Well, those certainly are the big states that are left, and they're states that I think are key to a Nixon victory. We think that we will carry all of those states, and we're looking particularly forward to California, which is a very important state to us, and it's really from there that Dick Nixon started his comeback trail.
At this point, it appears that Mr. Humphrey is leading in 2 of those states, Texas and Illinois.
That is true in the early reports, but I checked in Texas, for example, and I think the reason that they now show him leading there is the fact that the poll so far has a heavy San Antonio accent. Dallas County turned out with a tremendous vote today. Only 3 precincts have been counted just a few minutes ago. So I feel that when Dallas comes in, why, the Nixon margin will grow and he will carry Texas.
Now, last Sunday, Herb, you predicted there would be a minimum of 330 electoral votes for Mr. Nixon. When you sat down tonight, you said it looks like it might get interesting before the night's over. Is that a change? Is that a shift?
Well, I think 330 is of top interest to me, John. I still say we'll get 330 or more. I feel that with these kind of big states to come, and we've got very good reports coming out of Ohio. If you look at Illinois, which you mentioned also, the early returns come out of the city, and my understanding is that actually Humphrey is not carrying that as well as did John Kennedy. We feel that with downstate coming in, it'll make a big turn, and I think probably the best proof of that is the fact that Everett Dirksen obviously is going to win big, and he's trailing right now.
How do you account for Humphrey's apparent victory in New York?
Well, New York, as you know, John, has been a close state back and forth all the way along. We always rated it as a toss-up state. It's one of those where the margin isn't, probably by the time the count is complete, it will not be as big as it may look now. I think it's going to be a close state, but you'd certainly have to favor Humphrey at this point.
Part of this contest so far this year has been a contest between some candidates and some polls. Today, John Mitchell indicated a great deal of dissatisfaction with the last Harris poll, calling it a concoction. And he indicated that his own polls in New York, which he believes showed Mr. Nixon leading by 6%. Now, is there some adjustment possible in the attitude toward your own poll?
Well, you have to wait to see what the final returns are going to be. Our polls did show a lead. We've had a couple polls, and they projected a better vote upstate than has come in now. And as you know, thus far, what you have heavily emphasized in New York City, we feel will come closer as we get along.
Do you think the poll should be investigated, as does Mr. Mitchell?
I certainly do. I think that any last-minute poll, such as a Harris poll, is one that you have to look at it with a great deal of suspicion as to you just don't have that many votes shifting in that short a time.
Now, as Director of Communications, maybe you can clear up something for us. We were told that Mr. Nixon would not be holding a news conference tonight or tomorrow under any circumstance. It is whichever way the election goes. Is that correct?
He certainly plans no news conference tonight, and I think that's tradition. I don't know of any president who's had one on the night that he won his victory. Tomorrow, he probably not. It's been a very tough campaign. I think that the American people want to give the presidential candidate a chance to relax a little bit and think about where he wants to project his program. In the Nixon administration, there'll be numerous news conferences, just as there have been all through this campaign. And so I think you'll find him communicating with the American public in a very massive way.
Thank you very much, Herb Klein. Walter?
Herb, are you planning on helping him communicate with the public in a massive way if he wins tonight?
Well, I'm trying to do that right now. Beyond tonight, my plans aren't that firm, but I certainly have tried over a long period of time, and I'll continue to do what I can.
Well, the Potomac has a lot of charm, as well as does your native San Diego Bay, Herb.
That San Diego Bay sounds awfully good to me right now, I'll tell you.
Thank you, Herb Klein. A CBS News estimate of the Wisconsin senatorial race is that the Democratic incumbent Gaylord Nelson will, as expected, win in Wisconsin, defeating his Republican opponent Jairus Leonard by some 20 percentage points, 60 to 40. And in Iowa, on the presidential race, CBS News now estimates that when all the votes are counted there, Richard Nixon will indeed win Iowa with 60% of the vote. Humphrey 35% of the vote, and Wallace 5% of the vote in Iowa. CBS News color coverage of Election Night 68 will continue in a moment. Things counted. It is a dead heat at 41% between Richard Nixon and Hubert Humphrey. Nixon was 7,049,000 votes. Humphrey, 7,002,000 votes. George Wallace, 18% of the vote, 3,096,000 votes. We told you a moment ago, Richard Nixon has now added Iowa to his column of victories. According to our CBS News estimate of the final returns, and in electoral votes, that makes it look like this. Nixon forging ahead again in electoral vote in this very tight seesaw race, both seesaw in the popular vote and in the electoral vote. It's going first to one side and then the other. Nixon now has 115 electoral votes accumulated in 13 states. Hubert Humphrey has 110 electoral votes accumulated in 8 states, including New York and Michigan and Connecticut. Wallace has 39 electoral votes in 4 southern states. You know, we are also electing a Congress tonight, the 91st Congress, 34 senators, and all of the 435 representatives. This race is so tight tonight that it's not inconceivable that that new House of Representatives will have far more important duties at its first meeting than simply matters of legislation. It may end up having to pick the next president of the United States. If none of these 3 men get 270 electoral votes, a clear majority of the 435 outstanding electoral votes, 438 including the District of Columbia, then the matter goes to the House of Representatives, and there each state's delegation gets 1 vote. The majority of the delegation deciding how that state's vote will be cast. So it'll be very important as to how the state delegations break down in the new House of Representatives. In the old House, the Democrats had 28 seats, 28 state delegations. The Republicans had 18 state delegations, and 4 of the states had split delegations, which would not get a vote in a presidential vote. Mike Wallace, what does the new House lineup look like at this point?
Not very different, Walter. CBS News has called winners in 84 congressional races now in 20 states, and the results, contrary to expectations, show almost no change in the makeup of the House of Representatives. For example, 2 shifts, moderate to conservative and conservative to moderate, have canceled each other out so far. The only seat that has changed parties so far is in Virginia, where a Republican won the House seat vacated by a retiring Democrat, Porter Hardy. There'd been a good deal of talk that the House might be going more conservative, no matter which way it went as far as party was concerned. But for the time being anyway, the House is staying essentially where it has been during the last session of the Congress. Not very much going on in the way of change. Incidentally, 2 gentlemen about whom there's some curiosity across the country have had their races decided. The incumbent, Rogers Morton, a Republican, is the winner in Maryland's 1st congressional district. He is the brother of the retiring Republican Senator Thurston Morton of Kentucky. Rogers Morton returned in Maryland. And up in New Hampshire, you remember David Ho was the chairman of that state delegation out of the Democratic Convention, and Senator Eugene McCarthy's campaign manager. Well, he has lost in New Hampshire's 2nd congressional district to the incumbent Republican, James Cleveland.
I wonder if that display in Chicago, he was the one who tried to use his Dartmouth College credit card or something to get through the gates at the Democratic Convention, and there was quite a hoo-ha about it that night. I wonder if that had anything to do with it. There's a call in Oklahoma. The CBS News estimates that Mike Monroney, 18-year veteran in the Senate, will be defeated, has been retired from the Senate by his Republican opponent, former governor of the state of Oklahoma, Mr. Bellman, with 53% of the vote. Monroney, 45% of the vote, and George Washington, not the one you're familiar with, but a more recent George Washington, 2% of the vote in Oklahoma. Mike Monroney, who was a spokesman for and an arbiter for the aviation industry in the Senate, for one time won awards in the House of Representatives for his programs for reform of the Congress, has been retired after 18 years, according to our CBS News estimate. And now, from Maine, a presidential estimate by CBS that Hubert Humphrey will carry Maine with 57% of the vote. And Nixon will get 42% of the vote, we estimate, in Maine, that Wallace will get 1% of the vote there. It had been anticipated that Humphrey might well carry Maine. The consensus of the polls was he might carry it with around 50% of the vote. He did better than that. He did 57% of the vote, according to our CBS News estimate in Maine. Adding Maine's 4 electoral votes now to the Humphrey column brings him up to 114 electoral votes. Nixon has 115 electoral votes. It is very close indeed. In the popular vote, it still stands at a dead heat of 41% of the vote each, with now 1/5 of the country's precincts in, 21% of the vote in. Humphrey 41%, Nixon 41%, and Wallace 18%. Eric Severide, we were talking about the new House. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, Mike Wallace has just given the figures on that so far, and has pointed out that the only seat that's changed party hands in the House is that one in Virginia. This is rather extraordinary, but it's what a number of professional politicians were saying here earlier in this campaign, that Mr. Nixon's support, while very wide, seemed to be very thin. He certainly, as far as these House representative races are concerned, this is proving true. He just doesn't have any coattails here. He is not taking these men with him to get those extra 30 seats they needed to win, as far as we can read it now. And this will be very important if this thing does go into the House, of course, with a continuance of a Democratic majority. Apparently up in the northern industrial states, those people voting for Wallace are not going over to the Republican column, more conservative column, when it comes to congressmen. They're going back to their own incumbent Democrats from those districts for the House of Representatives. There's only been 3 presidents
before in our history, I believe, in modern history, that have men who've won the presidency for the first time and failed to take the Congress with them. Should Mr. Nixon win the presidency, he'd be number 4. The last was Mr. Eisenhower. This is out of the pattern, and it makes you think a bit about the left liberal wing of the Democratic Party this year. Those people who, with McCarthy and others, who didn't want to vote for Mr. Humphrey or go along with the party, and use the argument that the worse it's defeated, the more shattered, the easier for them to pick it up and put it together in a new formation further to the left in the next 4 years. But it doesn't seem as though anything like that is going to happen. It's pretty much intact, even should Mr. Humphrey lose by a narrow margin. It's still the powerful party in terms of the House seats. About all the instant wisdom I have at the moment, Walter.
We have also the interesting possibility in the House of Representatives, of course, that some of these congressmen may not vote party loyalties. Some of them already, as a matter of fact, I think 30 candidates for election this year, some of them incumbents, have pledged that they will vote however their district goes. And some 45 others were leaning toward that, may have made that pledge, as far as I know, before they actually got to the...
Yes, even if this were on the figures tonight, we're a hung jury, and it had to go to the House. There's no way to tell from these party makeup for these delegations in the House this early, I would think, what would happen.
That's the nature of the constitutional crisis we'll face. We're not going to know until January 6th, perhaps, with all the dickering that'll go on for these things. New Hampshire, we've got a presidential decision on a basis of our CBS News estimate that when all the votes are counted there, Richard Nixon will win New Hampshire with 56% of the vote, Humphrey 42, Wallace 2. That puts Nixon back into the lead in the electoral vote, 119 electoral votes to 114 for Hubert Humphrey. Humphrey is leading in states with 29 electoral votes. Nixon is leading in states with 53 electoral votes, or 54 electoral votes it shows there. That would bring his total to 173, Humphrey's 143. It takes 270 to win. And in Nebraska, CBS News estimates that in Nebraska, Nixon will win that state as anticipated with 68% of the vote, Humphrey 26 and Wallace 6. Adding Nebraska's vote now to Nixon's total, that's 5 more electoral votes for 124 for Richard Nixon, 114 for Hubert Humphrey. And on the popular vote, Nixon has just moved 1 percentage point ahead, but barely 1 percentage point, 41% to 40 for Hubert Humphrey. CBS News color coverage of election night 68 will continue in a moment.
These are fortune-telling cards. Ancient, mystical. Do you think they can tell us anything of today? Let's see. Cities in crisis. Polluted water. Choking air. Poverty. Lack of housing. Crime. The deck is stacked. What should we all do? Ignore the problems? Thousands have already gone to work to solve them. The Institute of Life Insurance, representing the life insurance companies in America, can report that life insurance companies are investing $1 billion to help rehabilitate slums and create new jobs in our cities. If you'd like some ideas on how you can help make our cities decent places to live in again, write for this free booklet. To Crisis, care of Postmaster, New York, 10001. It can't foretell the future, but it can help make it brighter.
CBS News' estimate of the final returns in South Dakota is that Nixon will win South Dakota's 4 electoral votes with 55% of the vote there, Humphrey 41%, and Wallace 4%. In the popular returns, and Humphrey is trailing by just less than 100,000 votes in the 15 million votes almost that the two men share. 7,242,000 to 7,317,000, and in percentages it barely breaks to an extra percentage point for Richard Nixon. George Wallace holding steady at his 18% of the vote. Repeating the electoral vote again, because that's where it counts. It takes 270 electoral votes to win the presidency. When these electors meet in each of their state capitals on next December the 16th, And in that count, Nixon has 124 electoral votes. Hubert Humphrey has 114 electoral votes. George Wallace of Alabama, 39 electoral votes. This is Walter Cronkite at CBS News Election Headquarters.
This is CBS.